It's time for Kevin Fiala to take a major step forward and be a leader on the Kings next season. We discuss that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also co-host of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show that wraps up the night in the NHL, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about a player that the Kings might target and could be available this offseason. He's a proven playoff performer and brings some of that sandpaper type of game that the Kings might be looking for. We'll also check in on a couple of Kings prospects who recently won championships and more. But we start with a player that can make you curse in frustration and yell in excitement. That is LA Kings forward Kevin Fiala. One of the things that is kind of fun about shows like this is things just kind of organically happen or get created as the show goes along. For example, one of our frequent emailers, Ed in Brea, was emailing a lot. He was very negative about the Kings. He would guarantee they were going to lose, and they would almost win almost every time that he would guarantee a loss. And so it became kind of a funny part of the show. That also happened with something surrounding Kevin Fiala last season. Now, I like to meet up with Kings fans, with fans of this show at games during the season. And almost always the fans would say something about good Kevin or bad Kevin, which was something that just kind of happened during the course of last season doing the shows. Because Kevin Fiala was kind of up and down early in the season, we were wondering, was this a game where we saw good Kevin or bad Kevin? And a lot of the people that I met would be like, are we going to see good Kevin or bad Kevin tonight? Or oh, I saw bad Kevin in the first period, or that was good Kevin in the second period, things like that. But that was something that we talked about a lot. It was kind of fun, unless you're Kevin Fiala and it was a bad Kevin. But as far as Kevin Fiala's season this past year, it was kind of appropriate. We saw good Kevin, and sometimes we saw bad Kevin, but there's no doubt that Kevin Fiala is a very important part of the LA Kings team and going forward. And the more he plays in a positive way, the more productive he is. It makes the Kings obviously a much, much more dangerous team. But earlier in the year, he was taking bad penalties. He was forcing plays that weren't there, turnovers, and he's just too important of a player to be that kind of a player. There were also good moments too. There were moments when he made amazing plays and scoring power play goals, which the Kings didn't do a lot of last year. But in the end, we needed to see a lot more good Kevin than bad Kevin. Fortunately, we did at the end of the year, and hopefully that's a good sign going forward for next season, because Kevin Fiala is going to be a very important part of the Kings' success, and he is a key piece of this LA Kings team. And he needs to be, I think, taking a step forward. Even as talented and as good he's been at times, I think he needs to also take more of a leadership responsibility on this team as well. But let's give you some Fiala facts before we get into things. Kevin Fiala is 28 years old, forward from Switzerland, just finished his 9th NHL season, his 3rd season in Los Angeles with the Kings after being acquired in a trade from the Minnesota Wild for prospect Brock Faber and a first-round draft pick in 2022. High price to pay for a talented player, but one that I still think in the end is probably going to be a good trade for the LA Kings. And let's be honest, it's probably going to be a good trade for both teams. Those are the best trades when you have a trade that helps both teams. Now, last season, Fiala was once again a very durable player for the Kings. He missed only one game during the 82-game regular season. He played all 6 playoff games. He's been durable in his time in LA. Of a possible 246 regular season games, he's played in 232 of them over the 3 seasons he's been an LA King. So he's been available and healthy for most of his time in Los Angeles, which is a good thing. Hope that continues. Now, this past year, Fiala did set a new career high in goals scored with 35 and a career high in power play goals scored with 14. Obviously, that's some good Kevin. He was tied with Adrian Kempe for the team lead in goals and led the team in power play goals this past season. More good Kevin. But Fiala also finished a -7. He had just 25 assists, which is not so good, 60 points, well off his typical production. He had 49 assists his first year, 44 his second year with the Kings, but just 25 a season ago. And the points were down as well. 72 his first year, 73 his second year. But again, last year, just 60 points for the LA Kings. So off a little bit there. So the goals were up, assists were down, points were in the neighborhood, but would like to see those assist numbers probably be closer to what they have been in the past. Now, Fiala never had more than 2 points in a game last season, which is surprising with his ability. He did have 19 games in which he had 2 points in a game. Now, Fiala did have more goals last season than some pretty big name players like Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews, Sidney Crosby. But of course, his point totals did not measure up to those types of players. As far as where Fiala was last season in terms of a goal scoring standpoint league-wide, he and Adrian Kempe were tied with 6 other players for the 18th most total goals last season. So some pretty good company. The other players that they were tied with, Brandon Hagel of the Lightning, Jason Robertson of the Stars, Ricard Raquel of the Penguins, Nico Hischier of the Devils, and Pavel Dorofeev of the Golden Knights. Of those other players, only Dorofeev had fewer points than Kevin Fiala last season. And of all those other players, Kevin Fiala is making the most money in terms of average annual value per year. Now he's going into year 4 of a 7-year contract that is paying him $7.875 million per season. He's under contract for the next 4 years. So he is a very important part of the Kings now and in the future. And he's making a little bit more money than some of the other players on that list that I mentioned that scored 35 goals in the season. Jason Robertson, Nico Hischier, Nazem Kadri, they all make $7 million or more, but Kevin Fiala makes more than all of them, a little bit more. So are the LA Kings getting the production that they would expect in terms of their investment from Kevin Fiala? In terms of goal scoring, yes, last year. In terms of point production, I would say probably not quite there, at least not last season. Now, Fiala did end last season strong, had a good playoff, but his first part of the season was a bit all over the place. Over the first 4 months, he had 16 goals and 29 points in 49 games. Over the last 3 months, he had 19 goals and 31 points in just 22 games played. He also had 3 goals and 7 points in 6 playoff games. So the second half of last season, the postseason, that's the Kevin Fiala we need to see more often than not going forward. Now, he and Quentin Byfield did develop some chemistry later in the season. That likely wasn't a coincidence, and both players had their best hockey of the season over those final 3 months. Hopefully, that will be a duo going forward in the next season, that they can build off their chemistry that they had together at the end of this year and take that at the start of next season and carry it all through the season. Now, was last season a bad season for Kevin Fiala? No. Could it have been better? Should it have been better? Probably could have been a little bit better, yes. If you wouldn't have had that up and down yo-yo type start to the season. Could have been a really good season for Kevin Fiala. So if the Kings are going to take that next step, right? Kevin Fiala and Quentin Byfield, taking that chemistry they developed last season and carrying it forward is going to be a big part of the Kings' success, or not. Those two guys need to take their games a step further, and hopefully them playing together and again having that chemistry will be a big part of the Kings' success. Now, the Kings made a big trade to get Kevin Fiala. He's being counted on as a key piece of this team now and in the future. So far, I think he's been good, but I also think he needs to be a little bit better, a little bit more consistent. The talent is there. He is highly skilled. He is creative. He can be a difference-making type of a player, but those players do it consistently, not in spurts and segments. So next season, we need to see a whole lot of good Kevin night in and night out. He showed us in the second half this past season that he can do it. Now it's about putting it together and being one of the leaders on this team. Last year, Fiala was challenged by head coach Jim Hiller to be better in his all-around game. And I think to both of their credit, to Hiller's credit and to Fiala's credit, I think he did respond to what Hiller asked him to do. And I think in the exit interview, Jim Hiller spoke pretty glowingly about Kevin Fiala and the way he took the criticism to heart, made the changes in his game, and became a better player. Now, there was a time earlier in the season, I remember I mentioned on a show that I watched Kevin Fiala, and yes, he hustles, and yes, he skates hard, but a lot of times it didn't seem much good came from it. It was just kind of skating around, but that changed later in the season. He was making positive plays without the puck, which is not something that you always recognize with Kevin Fiala. He stopped taking the unnecessary penalties. He stopped forcing plays when they weren't there. He became more consistent. He became a better all-around player, and it helped the Kings to be a better team. He has to continue to be one of their better players, and I think to take it just a little step forward next season. The Kings paid a pretty big price to get Kevin Fiala, and again, he hasn't been bad. I think at times he's shown he can be a very, very good player for the Kings. It just needs to be a little bit more consistent, needs to be there from the start of the year and carry it over all season long. And hopefully that can be another piece of the puzzle for the LA Kings getting to where we want them to be, which is to have playoff success. Up next, we're going to talk about a player the Kings may have tried to get once and may try to get again. That's next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That is where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. And you don't just manage your money, you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com, and you get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Well, if you listened to our fan feedback show from this past week, and if you didn't, please go check it out. It's available for you whenever you'd like to listen to it, as all our episodes are. We heard several Kings fans talk about how the Kings needed to get some players who are not afraid to get their hands dirty, players that can be difference makers in the playoffs and play that hard, physical type of game. And we talked about the Florida Panthers and one of their guys that fits that description, maybe one of the best players that fits that description, a playoff performer and a guy who is known to go to the dirty areas and be an agitator, and that is Sam Bennett. He is going to be an unrestricted free agent after this season, and we had a discussion about would the Kings target him. Now, of course, the rest of the league will be looking to get a guy like him as well. And there is a report, for what it's worth, that there's apparently a team out there that is willing to pay Sam Bennett $10 million per season, which is pretty wild for a player whose career high in goals is 28 and points is 49. However, he currently leads the Florida Panthers with 10 goals this postseason, and he's a big part of why they are in the Stanley Cup Finals for a third straight season. So yeah, if it's about playoff success, that's money well spent. But would the LA Kings be willing to pay a guy like Sam Bennett the same amount they may be paying their best player like Adrian Kempe? It seems unlikely, I would say. I would say if there's a team out there that really feels they're one piece away and they need that kind of a player, I could see them overspending to get a guy like Sam Bennett. I don't think the Kings necessarily fit that description. But they certainly could benefit from a guy like him. So what are some other options, perhaps? Well, there is another Florida Panthers player who is also never been afraid of getting his hands dirty. Another guy who has come up big in playoff hockey as well. His name is Brad Marchand. He is a Stanley Cup winner, and he has clutch performances in playoff games. This season, he's got an overtime game winner against the Toronto Maple Leafs to help the Florida Panthers reach the Stanley Cup final once again. He's probably a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. Now, he is 37 years old, but I think he still has some gas left in the tank. This past season, 23 goals, 51 points for the Bruins and the Panthers. That's not nothing. Has scored 20 or more goals in 12 consecutive seasons. Now, some have suggested the Kings need more leadership in the room. Brad Marchand is certainly a guy I think that would fill that bill. He has been an alternate captain for many years. And then the last couple of years that he was in Boston, he was the captain of the team. And he's physical in his own way, but he's more of a disturber, an agitator, probably than he is just a physical presence. He'll hit you, but he's not, the most physical guy in the world as far as just checking you into the boards. But again, he'll get his stick in your ribs. He'll slash in the back of the legs. He'll go to the net. He'll draw penalties, and he'll score goals in big moments. So Brad Marchand is a guy who is not well liked by a lot of hockey fans, but he is one of those guys. I'm sure Florida Panthers fans didn't like him until he became a Florida Panther, and now they probably love him. So what is he going to get, though, on the free agent market next season? He's coming off an 8-year deal that is paying him $6.125 million per season. I would think he's not going to get less than that. Now, it also depends on what type of contract he is looking for. Obviously, he wants to get a contract for as long as he possibly can. He wants a multi-year deal. I'm sure there'd be a lot of teams out there be interested in signing him for a 1-year deal because of his age, that kind of thing. And of course, at his age, a guy who's already won a Stanley Cup, maybe getting another Stanley Cup this year, you would think he's not looking to go to a bad team. He's looking to stay on a team that's going to have a chance at winning every year and have a chance at a Stanley Cup. Do the LA Kings fit that description or not? Certainly a playoff team. I mean, 4 years in a row making the playoffs. Maybe if they get just that extra mix player here or two, they're here or two, maybe that is the difference. Maybe Brad Marchand feels like he could be a difference maker. Now, he's not a natural fit necessarily for the Kings. He's a left winger. He's a left shot. So if the Kings, for example, didn't want to bring back an Andrei Kuzmenko, who's a right wing and a right shot, there's not kind of a natural fit there. And, we talk about the Kings needing help on the power play. Brad Marchand isn't much of a power play help. He had just 5 power play goals this past season. Of course, the real question is, with all these free agents that are available to go to any team, do they want to come to LA? We had talked with a friend of the show, Carl Balikian, recently about, and we should do a show on this, frankly, who are the biggest free agents the Kings have signed in the offseason? And you have to really think about it, because there isn't a great list there of big-time free agents. The Kings have made some big trades, certainly in their history. We talked about Kevin Fiala came over in a trade. Of course, the Wayne Gretzky trade was the biggest trade in hockey history. So they have done, there's been the trades, but the big-time free agent signings haven't really been there. Would this qualify as one of those kind of signings? In name, it would. In the type of player they're getting at this point in his career, that's arguable. But again, Brad Marchand is the type of guy, you're not looking to come over here and carry the team to the next level necessarily. Maybe a guy who can kind of push them across the finish line a little bit, because as we've said, leadership, the sandpaper type of game, and a guy who does step it up in the playoffs. Brad Marchand does fill all of those boxes. But is he a guy that wants to come to LA? I don't know that. There was a report by Elliot Friedman, one of the best hockey insiders out there, weeks ago, that the Kings did try and get Brad Marchand before the trade deadline. Ultimately, he decided that he wanted to go to the Florida Panthers. Now, he was traded. It wasn't like it was, they didn't just sign him. He didn't get to choose anywhere he wanted to go. But he had made it known to the Boston Bruins that, yes, he would accept a trade to the Florida Panthers. And why not? They're the defending Stanley Cup champs. And they have no state income tax, nice weather. Add it all together, it seemed like a pretty logical place for him to go. Would LA be palatable? Would LA be a destination for Brad Marchand? I do not know. Time will tell. It'll be very interesting to see if that could happen. And also, again, we're dealing with a lot of unknowns here when it comes to Ken Holland. We don't exactly know what he's going to do to try and put his stamp on this team. We know he thinks the Kings are close. We know he's very complimentary of what the Kings have done, where he thinks they are, and just thinks they need some pieces here and there. Is Brad Marchand that type of a piece? We will have to all wait and see, but it is certainly a very intriguing name that does check off some boxes for what a lot of LA Kings fans think the Kings are lacking. All right, up next, a couple of Kings prospects are champions. We will give you the details on that next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Checking out some Kings prospects. I want to say congratulations to Jared Woolley, the Kings' 6th-round pick in 2024, and his London Knights won the Memorial Cup over the weekend with a 4-1 win over Moncton. If you're unfamiliar with the Memorial Cup, it's the biggest championship in junior hockey. You've got four different divisions up there. You've got the Ontario Hockey League, the Western Hockey League, and the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League. And all three of those league champions meet up with a host city, and they battle it out for the champions of junior hockey. It's a pretty big deal in Canada, maybe a bit of a lesser deal here in the States. But London Knights are the champs, and Jared Woolley, 6'4", 215-pound defensive defenseman, didn't have a point in the final. Matter of fact, he did not have a point in the 5 games of the tournament, but was a part of the London Knights and their championship team. I'm sure a very satisfying win for him and his teammates as they finished runner-up the previous year, but they win the Memorial Cup this year. And Jared Woolley is certainly a very interesting prospect for the LA Kings. He's just in his 2nd season of junior hockey, and he'll definitely be back in London again next year. After that, I think with his age, he would be eligible to play for the Ontario Reign. He'll be at Kings Development Camp for sure this summer. And he's a guy he's getting a lot of great experience at the junior level, not only playing for one of the top junior programs in all of junior hockey. He's being coached by a former NHL player in Dale Hunter, and he's getting a lot of experience because London is one of those teams. They always qualify for the playoffs. They're in the Memorial Cup every year. So they get, about, 12, 13 extra games a year by playing in those events. So that all those games certainly help in Jared Woolley's development. And even though he's a 6th-round pick, the Kings have seen enough from him. Obviously, he's got the size that they did sign him to an entry-level contract. So Jared Woolley has at least earned that as kind of a bit of a project type of a draft pick for the LA Kings. Another Kings prospect also recently won a championship and was just signed by the LA Kings as well. That would be defenseman Kirill Kirsanov. He was signed by the Kings to a 2-year entry-level deal over the weekend. He's 22 years old, was the Kings' 3rd-round pick, 84th overall in the 2021 draft. Kirsanov has been playing professionally in his native Russia for the last 4 seasons. This year, he played a career-high 34 games in the KHL. That is Russia's top pro league. Think of it as the NHL, their version of the NHL. And then after his season ended, he joined the team's VHL team, V as in victory. Think of it as the Russian version of the AHL compared to the NHL. So he won a championship with the VHL team there in Russia. Kirill Kirsanov is 6'2", 200 pounds. He's a defensive defenseman, and he will be coming to North America for next season. He will be joining the Ontario Reign. So it'll be interesting to see what Kirill Kirsanov is able to bring to the Ontario Reign as part of their defense coming up next season. A couple other quick notes on some prospects. No surprise here, but the Kings' top skating prospect, Liam Greentree, was named to the Ontario Hockey League's first team. He was also named the Windsor Spitfires Player of the Year. And also Kings goalie prospect Carter George was named to the second team there in the OHL, despite playing on a really bad team. But his individual excellence still recognized by the Ontario Hockey League. I did want to mention real quick, there have been various reports about Ontario Reign head coach Marco Sturm being the next head coach of the Boston Bruins. Those reports came out last week. He still has not been officially named head coach, so I'm not sure if those reports, how accurate they are, but some trustworthy names have come out. Pierre LeBrun, for example, I saw that he reported that Marco Sturm is in fact a finalist for the Boston Bruins job. Apparently it's between him and another assistant coach. I think it's Mitch Love of the Washington Capitals, I believe. So Marco Sturm, not quite yet the next head coach of the Boston Bruins, but it's between him and somebody else. So we'll see. I don't know. Look, if the Ontario Reign need to hire a new head coach because Marco Sturm has left, then that is obviously something else on the grocery list of things to do for GM Ken Holland. I don't know how high on the priority list it is, if they've already considered who his replacement would be or not, if there's other people in the organization who have kind of basically advised Ken Holland on that. Don't know, but it is something obviously that the LA Kings may have to consider coming up this week if Marco Sturm leaves as head coach of the Ontario Reign and joins the Boston Bruins as their next head coach. Could be obviously a tremendous opportunity for him. And if that in fact does happen, we'll talk about it here on Locked On LA Kings. For you everydayers, those of you who listen to watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up, we will be continuing our look at possible offseason changes for the Kings, some free agency targets, talk about Kings players this year and what the season is like to come for them going forward. We'll look at some potential draft targets as we are less than a month away from the NHL draft here in Los Angeles. And we have an interview coming up this week with the host of Locked On NHL Prospects. His name is Sebastian High, and he's going to give us who he thinks the LA Kings might target in the upcoming NHL draft. Looking forward to all that and looking forward to you joining us. If you want to stay connected with the show, you can send us an email, lockedoneddie@gmail.com. EDDIE is the email address. And if you are watching on YouTube, we'd love for you to leave your comments in the comments section. And if you would like to stay connected with the show on social media, we'd love for you to do that too. X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.